Is it your client's desire that this case be fully adjudicated as opposed to settled, so there is some level of accountability on the Blackhawks' part?
What he wants is for the Blackhawks to acknowledge what happened so that other franchises accept the fact that they need to be honest, straightforward, and have programs in place to stop this from happening to anybody else. If that happens and there's a settlement, that's fine with him. He's not out for, an eye for an eye, but this has ruined his professional career, and we all know how much work somebody goes to when they're trying to be a professional athlete. So he does want to be compensated for his losses, but he doesn't care whether it's by trial or settlement, as long as people acknowledge what was wrong and there's some systems put in place to protect other young people from this. Speaking psychologically, the first thing any victim wants to hear is that they're heard. I think if they would have said, we hear what you're saying, and if this happened to you, what a horrible, horrible thing it is. Give us some names. Let us talk to these people. Let us check what you've said. And then if they called back and said, look, we've heard, we know that Mr. Vincent came in. We know this meeting came forward. We, of course, weren't there in the room with you, but, we know this was something that went on. What can we do to make this right by you? If they would have done that, no lawsuit would have been filed. But it's this, ostrich approach, denial, denial, denial that has led to this. And frankly, it's the best thing that's probably happened to professional sports, because we need to eradicate everything like this. And it's the pocketbook that will keep other companies and franchises from ever allowing anything like this to happen again.
Can you explain to our audience what role the mental skills coach James Gary had in this with your client?
So he was called in to speak to John Doe after John Doe came forward with this, along with his roommate, who is another witness in the case, who's asked to be anonymous. But I spoke to him personally several times, and they called Gary in to basically talk them into doing nothing. And again, I think it's key that it was just before the Stanley Cup, and they didn't want to rock the boat, in my opinion. And he basically told them, both of them, to just let it drop, that there was nothing to be gained by it, that they wouldn't have to come into contact with him again, and that it was probably their fault because they probably did something to cause this to happen.
That's so abhorrent and hard to think about. A team-employed mental skills coach advising a victim to be quiet. Do you suspect that there is some genuine institutional doubt within hockey, perhaps within the Blackhawks, about whether this qualifies as assault? Like that they're going to say, well, this was a grown person and they hooked up or did not hook up, that they will try to minimize this as genuinely being a crime of assault and instead try to pose it as a sexual pass that fails, that kind of thing.
Okay, if they do that, that's even more disgusting. I'm the mother of 5 kids, and the thought that one of my kids would be, in an environment, let's say they put my daughter in a camp with a male teenage counselor sleeping in the room with them, who then makes a pass at my daughter. And then they said, well, it's just a pass. I mean, what's the big deal? So he tries to fondle her or do other worse things. Just forget it. It's just have fun, stay at camp. It's okay. I mean, all of us can say how horrible that is. So now, because we're dealing with same sex, we're going to have a different set of criteria and say that we should just look the other way, like what, man up to sexual assault? So I hope they would never take that slant. What's really interesting to me is, where is the public outcry on this? I'm not saying that the public isn't disgusted about it, but it's because it's not really getting the kind of press that you would expect to have happen if it was a heterosexual event.
Well, I think that's valid, and that's why I bring up that possible tack that they might take. I can tell you there's a lot of rage around the SCORE audience and around these hallways as it's being discussed. And one of the things that seems enraging, what can you tell us about what the Blackhawks did in terms of writing positive letters of recommendation, or you tell us what you know about that in enabling Brad Aldrich to work further and in fact work with youth after all of this?
Okay, so I haven't been able to get a copy of anything, but my understanding was that when people called to verify his employment, that nothing was said to any of them about this information that they had, and that the employment was verified without any negativity whatsoever. And again, I don't know what the situation is with that. I know that Mr. Aldrich's father also works in the NHL, and I think this is going to have to come out as we do discovery to see why was Brad Aldrich being protected.
I wanted to ask you about discovery. I mean, this is something that happened 11 plus years ago. There will be many. They'll have their witnesses. You'll have yours. He said, et cetera. Like, how wide of a range here when you get into the Blackhawks and what happened 11 years ago? What are you expecting the discovery process to look like?
You know, several players, like maybe 5 to 10 players, have called either me or Rick Westhead, the TSN reporter, and said, if you need me, I'll testify. We all knew what happened. Everybody knew that Aldrich had done this to these two players. It was called an open secret. So these people are willing to come forward and say that. Other players have said that when they went into Aldrich's room where he would play the video, and I understand it's completely different now, that now the players are sent video clips, you know, by email or whatever, and they look at them in the privacy of their own room. They don't go to like the hotel room of the video coach, but that he would have porn on the video before he played the tapes of players. So people were very aware that there was something really odd with this guy. I mean, and after all, he's a sex offender. And if you look at what happened at Notre Dame where he went, he left there, and in the record is the fact that there was an allegation of unwanted touching.